getting to the point in the ministry where I think I might be reusing stories. So if you remember this one, good for you. But I don't remember if I used it or not. So maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Maybe it sounds familiar. Who knows? But when I was young, I was a very passionate believer in the power of Santa Claus. I was convinced that he could do whatever I needed him to do. He could get whatever we needed to get. And I don't know necessarily where that came from, but it kind of played against my mother one year when, we made up our Christmas list and I handed it off to her, and there was one particular toy there that she was having a hard time finding. That time, the X-Men comics had got the TV show, the cartoon going in the mid-'90s there. Pizza Hut had a deal with them. You go to Pizza Hut, you get an X-Men VHS tape or something. So we really, my brothers and I really like X-Men. We had several of the characters, their little flying jet, but we didn't have the Storm action figure, and that's what I put on my list. I wanted the Storm action figure. And I knew that Santa would get it for me. Well, Mom did her best. She went to all the toy stores, Walmart and Sears. KB Toys was around back then. Toys R Us. None of them had it. She couldn't find it anywhere. All the other characters we already had, other characters we didn't, but not this one. And finally, in desperation, she finally calls the manufacturer, and they tell her, "Oh, we discontinued that. You're not going to be able to find it." And so she's trying to figure out what to do about this. And one day in December, she sits me down, and we're, supper or something. And she says, "Well, John, Santa can't always get you everything that's on your list. Some things might not be there." And with, not tears, but rather with eyes filled with wonder and joy, I said, "Oh no, Mom, Santa can do anything." Young me had set my hope on the promise of Santa, that he can make or do anything. And in some ways, I was hoping against hope, though I maybe didn't know it at 4 or 5 years old or whatever I was at the time, that though Santa might not be able to fulfill all his promises through my parents, he was trying. But in our epistle reading today, we hear Paul reflecting on what it was that Abraham did and why it was that he was counted the father of many nations, and why this was credited to him as righteousness, he says. It says that Abraham was hoping against hope that God would indeed fulfill his promise to him, that he would indeed be made the father of many nations. Because if you know the story, when Abraham starts his journey with God, he's about, 75, 80 or so. And when God makes the promise to him and to Sarah that they will indeed have a child born through them, they're older than that yet. And in fact, the last time that God promises it, Abraham's 99 and Sarah is 89. And his promise is that indeed you will have a son. And when God promises this to Abraham, he laughs. And then a little while later, God appears again and makes the promise again, and Sarah laughs. And they think it's just ridiculous. God, you're going to give us a son. We're 99 and 89. We're almost 190, 100 and also 90. That's absurd. But Abraham, as Paul reflects, took the word of the Lord as the word of the Lord. He was faithful to what God had promised and hoped against hope. Hope against what he saw with his eyes, against the frailty of his body, the barrenness of Sarah's womb. Hoping that because God said it would be done, it would be done. Not knowing perhaps how exactly it could happen. And at the right time, it indeed did happen. And their laughter of disbelief turns into the laughter of joy. And so they named the child Laughter, Isaac. It's the Hebrew word for laughing. God had promised to Abraham something incredible, something that didn't make sense unless it was God doing it. We hear these similar promises in our gospel as well today, that Jesus has come not to call the righteous but sinners, people like Matthew, who is a traitor to his own nation, working for the oppressive empire, collecting taxes. And yet when Jesus comes and says, "Follow me," he does. And he sits with all of his tax-collecting friends and has a meal with them. And those Pharisees who are scrupulously trying to follow the law to make sure that they fulfill and are righteous to what God has given them are reprimanded and reminded that God desires mercy and not sacrifice. And a synagogue leader comes in hoping against hope that Jesus, this miracle worker, can indeed raise his daughter from the dead. And on the way, this woman who suffered from hemorrhaging, from bleeding for 12 years, comes up with the same faith, saying, "If only I could reach out and just touch the cloak of Jesus, I would be made well." And Jesus, seeing this, rewards her faith. And she is indeed made well. And coming to the house, he sees the mourners, the flute players, those who are beginning the time of mourning, the public mourning. And he tells them to go away because she is but sleeping. The little girl is sleeping, not dead. And they too laugh at him. Because according to their understanding and what they see with their eyes, clearly the girl is dead. She's not sleeping. Jesus, you're being ridiculous. We know the difference between sleeping and death. And yet, the synagogue leader's faith in God, the faith in Jesus, who indeed does impossible things, his faith is rewarded and fulfilled when he receives his daughter back well. We hope against hope. We place our faith in the God who is making promises for us by himself. He doesn't promise because I've got a contract, or promise because I've done things in the past. He promises because he is faithful. And so I put it to us then, what is it that God has promised us? What is it that God has said to us that might make us laugh because it was so absurd and ridiculous, like a 90-year-old having a baby or a dead child only sleeping? Just in the course of Matthew, in the Gospel according to Matthew, God promises us many things that seem absurd. Promises that the meek will inherit the earth. He promises that those who are pure in heart will see God. That when we are persecuted and abused for righteousness and for the name of Christ, we will indeed be rewarded. He has promised that he is building his kingdom and that it is here among us, within us. That those who follow his commandments and bear fruit are like those who have set their house on the rock and will not be shaken, even when the great storms come through. And most of all, God has promised that he is with us, even to the end of the age. So Jesus promised as he left his disciples and ascended, and so he promises us. And we might find that a little absurd and laugh at the idea that God is indeed with us. In the midst of our concerns and our worries, in this physical world where our hunger and our hurts climb and clamber for our attention, we might laugh at the idea that God is indeed with us. And though the promise may come at a time that we weren't expecting, or rather, our timeline is rarely aligned with God's timeline, he does fulfill his promises. God is indeed with us. Those of us who are meek will indeed inherit the earth. We will face persecution for the name of Christ. And if we follow his commandments, we will indeed be building a house that will survive when troubles come. And so we may occasionally laugh at the promises of God, seeing the world around us when he does fulfill them. The laughter we have will turn from that of incredulity, of disbelief, of laughing at something that is impossible. And we will begin to laugh with joy that indeed God is faithful, that he is fulfilling his promises in his own good time, and that he is indeed with us to the end of the age. Amen.